Hi, I'm Roland, and welcome back to Practical Plastic. And as you can see today, it's a big box. So, this is now episode 50 for the channel. So, I wanted to do something that, like usual, something a little bit different, but I wanted to pull one of the, let's say, what I consider one of my special kits that I've added to my stash. So, I've had this wouldn't say little beauty. I had this monster sitting in my stash for about 2 years, waiting for the right occasion to be built, and the occasion has arrived. Good stuff. So we are going to dig through this big box and take a look at all the parts in there, because there's a bunch of stuff in here. In 1/24 scale, this kit is building out with about 370 parts. Some of those parts will not be used because you get to choose between one of two different engine options, but still, figure a good 350 parts to build this bus. It does have a full interior, full engine detail. This looks like a real beauty. Plus, love the subject matter. Really something different, and I love to switch things up and do some different things. So, today, as I said, we're going to go through the parts. Before we do that, as usual, I want to say thank you for watching. Please do like, subscribe, share, hit the alert button, all that good YouTube stuff. But also, this being episode 50 for the channel, even though I have not done 50 builds, but episode 50 is still something that I want to say a big thank you for watching and coming back and seeing the things that I do for my hobby interest, and hopefully for your hobby interest as well. That said, let's dig in. All right. Okay, so looking down on the very big box. Now, one of the reasons I like to do these open box segments, and I've done a few prior to changing the way I do the build videos, and with a few other kits that are a little bit on the bigger side in terms of parts count, subject matter, whatever, is, not all of us get the opportunity to do something like this. And since it was sitting in my stash, now I'm going to build it. If you don't get the opportunity to do this, whether you don't have the space for it or you simply can't get your hands on one, because I like to view everything in the context of people who are new to the hobby or starting in the hobby or just, casually building in the hobby and maybe not willing to jump on something like this, is what something like this is actually like. And, to put that in context, if you're walking around in a hobby store and you see a regular 1/24 scale box and then you see this monstrosity, it is something that you may look at and go, I might want to build a nice little 1/24 scale car, but don't know if you want to jump into something big like this. Well, the reason I say all this, it's really no different than building any other kit. It's just bigger parts. Yes, a few more. As I said, the parts count coming in about 370. So you're looking easily 3 times, almost 4 times what you see in your typical 1/24, 25th scale car kit. But same as everything else. You have your parts, you have your instructions, you work, you build, you put your machine together. So I'm going to open this up and we'll start going through stuff. Now, taking the box off, first thing to notice, this box is it's pretty full. We have this ridiculously large decal sheet here. Yep, these are all decals, and we'll go over that in a moment. But just to show you how all of these parts are in here, it's nicely packed. Everything's bagged. Tons and tons of stuff. All right, so I'm going to unbag this and then we'll look at it sprue by sprue, instructions, decals, all that good stuff. Alrighty. All right, so first thing we'll take a look at are the instructions. This is a Revell Germany kit. Now, after just having talked about the box, one thing I would like to mention, it is a well-packaged kit. I know some people, and I have to say myself as well, the typical Revell Germany boxes, the side slide box where the parts come out, the boxes tend to be pretty flimsy. Wish they would do something different there and go with a typical, lid on box. But this is a lid on box, but the inner box is nice and solid, so no damage on anything. That's great. But on a positive note, we get the Revell Germany style instructions. They're not the full color ones that you sometimes get with newer printings, but nevertheless, we do get a nice history of the bus, and we get our parts layout, and then we go into the build. And as you can see, and as I always say, instructions are instructions, so they are laid out well in typical Revell fashion, Revell Germany fashion in particular. And it is a lot of stuff, but it walks you right through. And then, of course, we have our decal options in the back. So, speaking of decals, without doubt, the largest decal sheet I have ever had come across my table. And this is really something else. First of all, that it arrived, with the kit in terms of shipping without damage. That is wonderful. But what's really cool, so all of these decals, that's all the seat fabric pattern. So driver's seat here, and then all the passenger seats in the bus. So that's really cool. Just lay them on and your seats are detailed. We do have all sorts of little placards, instrument gauges, things like that. And then over here, some of the things you would see, the route markings, license plates, and the big advertising placards that would go on the side of the bus. So again, very cool. And once again, for perspective, my handy dandy VW Rabbit comparative measuring stick, and you can see that is something else. So one of the things I really like about Revell Germany is they are not afraid of going into these large subject matter kits. They've done a couple of different odd vehicles, some in 24 scale. They've done quite a few in larger scales. If you watched some of my earlier episodes, the 116 VW bus, this was a really cool build. This was a really cool build. And again, I don't know of other model companies offering quite as much in terms of these odd vehicles in, larger scales. Anyway, so we have our front cab, and that is looking very nice, and it looks straight and true. Now we have these two shells. This is the rear of the bus, this is the front of the bus, but you'll see there are pieces for doing the interiors. So we go into our first real part sprue. This is for building one of the engines, and it is crisp. The parts are nicely detailed. So we even have some very fine moldings here. I don't know if that's an injector rail or a stair rail, what that might be, but I'm assuming that is an engine part. But as you can see, nice, very nice. Then we can take a look at our tires. It is a single rear axle double tire, so we do not get a huge selection of tires, but the tires we get, They have a nice tread pattern. They are no names, but it's a bus, so it's not exactly a marquee type vehicle. We get all sorts of clear parts, not surprisingly, for all those bus windows. This is a 2-sprue bag, and I'm going to leave them in there so they do not get scratched. And then we have yet another sprue of clear parts for even more windows. So if you do not have a clear parts cement, I use this testers, but there's Mod Podge, there's a number of different adhesives for doing, or cements for doing clear parts. Obviously for a kit like that, really something to look into. Now we get into some of our guts, and as you can see, we have our frame here. This is the inside of the roof. We have our differential, beefy drive shaft, exhaust. So again, all well molded, nice and clean. And looking up into this roof, you can see there's all sorts of rivet detail and the framing detail. So that is looking very nice. And now we go to the upper shell of the roof. And you can see that looks nice. We have a very big chassis / floor pan with some detail molded into it. Another subframe area here. And looking at this, it does have a little bit of a warp, but between this piece, the framing piece that's going to go on there, and on our next sprue, this flooring piece, a lot of this should self-correct in assembling it together, because here too you can see there is a slight warp in that. So that's something you'll have to watch during the build. In this case, I'll have to watch during the build. But the nice thing when you're dealing with multiple layers of pieces, a frame, a chest, floor pan, and then an inner floor pan, you put all these things together, and a lot of the warp can be taken out because you're forcing these pieces to align, and they're not going to align when they're bananaed or twisted. So just aligning them and cementing them together, you will true up the pieces. And now we have, these are insides of the body, and what's nice, all sorts of locators for all the benches. It is a bus, so there is going to be a degree of repetitive assembly because it's a bus and there's a lot of seats. So, but that should be pretty exciting to build and get all of that to come together. Now we have, I'm not sure if this is the upper floor or the lower floor. I think this is the upper floor of the bus, and another interior section. So those will slot up along here, and you can see big tab cutouts, big tab locators. So that will go right together, and this should make assembly, hopefully, a fairly smooth process. And we go into another very large sprue. So on here, let me turn this. You can see this is one whole side of the bus. Bus cab goes on the front, and the bus rear is going to go on there. So to give you an idea of, this will be quite a shelf piece when it is done. But in here, a lot of little detail pieces. I really love the way they did the steps here. The step treads are molded in. Would have been nice if those were separate, but those can be painted with a little care and get the same effect of the tread. We do see a little bit of flash here. These molds, I believe, are from 2011, but looking clean for the most part, which is good. You know, there are some little cleanup, but there's always a little cleanup. And again, looking at this sprue, again, we can see there is a bit, quite a bit of a warp here. But again, on a big side plate like this, locating this up to the structure, again, when you're building in layers tend to self-correct. And we have our other side of the bus, steering wheel, and we have some more body panels. And again, everything is looking pretty nice on here. Now there's not going to be any detail on the inner sides because we do have those separate interior pieces. So we'll move into our next stack. You'll notice now we're in a gray. This is sort of a light gray. So technically the kit is molded in color, but that doesn't look London bus red to me. So, you know, there will be a significant paint treatment involved. And again, on here, it looks like we have some handrails. Yep. Frame for the front. I'm glad that is a separate piece. You can see that will go on like so. I believe that Revell does have, or maybe it's an aftermarket, but I believe somebody out there has an aftermarket photo etch set for this kit, which obviously I haven't looked into, but I believe that is out there. I'm not going to go into that in detail because when I do these reviews of the open kit, that's not included in the kit, so really not inclined to talk about that. So here is the other set of engine parts for the, there are two motors, two complete motors that you have to choose from with this kit. So you get to build a second motor, and this one as well looks nicely done. Lots of nice detail on there. So that is looking good. And talking about repetitive assembly, we're going to get into parts for the seats. So we have two of these sprues, and these are the frames for the seats. And again, I am very happy to see that these are all molded separately, because that is going to make painting so much easier. You can paint all of these and then whatever paint treatment for the seats, assemble them. It's like you'll have to sit there with a brush and try to paint all these frames out on the on seat, you know, larger seat pieces. So that is good to see. But wait, you thought those were all the seat frames? There's more. So now we have another set of seating frames, and some of these have upright support bars to connect into the structure. So those grab rails are very bus-like. And speaking of seats, we do have two of these sprues, like so. And on here, you can see we have lots of seats. Now, because we have those really nice decals for the seats, they're not molded with a pattern or anything else. They're just smooth, and that's just as well, because it will make applying those decals nice and straightforward. Lay them in, mark fit, and they should be good to go. We have our wheels. We have lots of feet for the seats. You know, the support post for the seats looks like an inner bumper piece. So that is that. And then at last, the final sprue. And here we can see an insert for the, I assume that will be the rear of the bus from the size of the window. And we have some more, I think these are supports for the steps. I'm not doing this to identify all the parts, but to show you what is there. And there we go. So a lot of stuff. Now, just going to go back to the instructions. because I do want to show, after seeing the parts, how this really ties together. And as you can see here, here's an example of adding the seats, adding this interior side portion, and then what we end up with is basically the guts of the bus as one build, and then the upper level of the bus, and then that mounting as a whole unit onto the bottom of the bus, and then over here closing up the inner structure with outer structure pieces. So yes, this should all true itself up as it goes together. Apparently a hand drill is, they put a question mark, but if you choose to drill out some holes for some of the pieces, it looks like they give you all the spots where to go. I did see dimples on the pieces to indicate where those drill marks are, so that goes right ahead. And the other nice part is, you will notice when the bus builds and you have the exterior on, the whole upper deck is open. So you can have the roof of the bus on there. And there it is. You can have that on there to keep dust out. And if you want to display the bus like a summer touring bus, you can take the roof off and the whole thing will be open. So I have to say, I had the benefit of going to London one time with my father, and we just rode the double-decker buses around the city. And on one of the routes we picked up, we were able to sit right up front on the upper deck and just look out the windows, and it was a pretty neat experience being right up there and looking out. You know, a vehicle like this, it's a large vehicle, and as you can tell from the kit and 1/24 scale compared to our little VW Rabbit measuring stick, it's going to be a big kit. But you know, when you're in this thing in Europe, where the cars are so much smaller than they are here, that this thing is like this big red monster going down the road. And when you're up there looking down, it was interesting experience. Anyway, that trip down memory lane. So that is the open kit review for this London bus. So look forward to doing this build, and in the next episode we'll be digging into it. So in the meantime, as always, thank you for watching. Please do subscribe, like, share, hit the alert, all that YouTube stuff. And in the meantime, enjoy your hobby. Alrighty.